So we want to begin by acknowledging our presence on the ancestral and unceded territory of the Tongva and Kizh Nation peoples and their neighbors from north to south, the Chumash, Tataviam, Katanamak, Serrano, Cahuilla, Peomcuichum, Ahashiman, Ipai Tipai, Kumeyaay, and the Quechan peoples whose ancestors ruled the region that we now call Southern California for at least 9,000 years. Indigenous stewardship and rightful claims to these lands have never been voluntarily relinquished nor legally extinguished. We pay respects to the members and elders of these communities, past and present, who remain caretakers and advocates of the lands, river systems, and the waters and islands of the Santa Barbara Channel. For a more detailed land acknowledgement authored by the USC Van Hunnick History Department, we invite you to visit their website, and my colleague Maya will be putting a link to that in the chat. And we'd love to know where you all are watching from. I was reading the chat earlier while we were getting set up, so feel free to share that as well. And there's a fabulous resource for you to investigate what Indigenous territory you're on, and Maya will share that link as well. So my name is Martha Stroud. I'm the Associate Director of the USC Dornsife Center for Advanced Genocide Research, and I'm so delighted to welcome all of you to this event and this celebration of the 10th anniversary of the founding of the Center for Advanced Genocide Research, which was literally 10 years ago today. So we're so happy to come together with so many familiar faces and people who've been a part of our programs and our center and reflect on and share some highlights of the past decade. We will have an opportunity after some remarks from Wolf and me and some of our former fellows and visiting scholars for you to ask questions or share any memories you have of your time at the center, and we really hope that you will share. We are recording this and that will be up on our YouTube channel, so if you'd prefer to write a comment instead of putting your face on YouTube, just keep that in mind, although we love your faces. And we actually set this up as a Zoom meeting instead of a webinar so that we could see your faces and reconnect with you. We have a lot of great memories of all of you who are here. So now it's my pleasure to introduce the founding director of the USC Dornsife Center for Advanced Genocide Research, Chappell Guerin Chair in Jewish Studies and Professor of History at USC, Wolf Gruner.
Thank you, Marta. And I have to, first of all, thank Marta and also former and current staff members, because without them, this everything would not have been possible. So I want to just express this. And I think many of the former fellows whom we see here, and I really appreciate it, will agree with me, also the visiting scholars and the students. And so thank you, Marta, and also Maya, and as I said, former staff members too. It is, or it was supposed to be a very kind of celebratory moment, but I do this here with a heavy heart, because right now at USC, students have a die-in because of the protest yesterday and heavy police force kind of suppressing their free speech rights here on campus. And so for USC, this is a difficult situation, but I think in general, we are in a situation also when we think about mass violence across the world. In many regions, many countries, we have systematic mass violence going on. So these times are very difficult. And as I said, so as much as I wanted to celebrate, I'm still kind of very depressed by the situation. But then on the other hand, I think it actually shows how important the work of the center was and is. Because it is, on the one hand, to really understand why people are participating in mass violence, also to realize how people can resist these kind of developments. But then also, where does this actually start? And it often starts with kind of discrimination against certain groups in societies which are still democratic and not dictatorial regimes, but when they are on the brink to collapse into authoritarian societies. So that's why I think the moment here at USC and in other universities in the countries is so much about free speech and to kind of really think about this moment in time. So, as I said, it's not easy to do this today, but I want to just share a little bit about the past of the center, which so many of you were kind of a formative element to. So, the history of the center actually is older than when we founded it. So, it all started when I came to USC, and the Dornsife College, at the time it was just called college, put out a competition for, and they called it 2020, kind of important research for 2020. And I kind of put out a proposal about resistance to genocide, which was then one of the three winners of the competition. And this was forming an academic kind of program of annual conferences and also seminars and speakers whom we invited to campus. And now you can see that actually these elements then were part of the foundation of the Center for Advanced Genocide, which we at the time did together with the Shoah Foundation. And I'm also want to kind of highlight that Doug Greenberg is here, who was very instrumental, not only being the first kind of with Margie together, his wife, they were both the first to endow a fellowship at the center. So that's really important because I think the others were following this path. But he was even more instrumental actually in opening up our thinking about like genocides at USC here when he was the former director of the USC Shoah Foundation. And so I think I want to highlight this. So when we founded the center, we envisioned that this will be not any center like others, and there are many. So how do we want to distinguish ourselves? And this was to really heavily focusing on research, which not many centers in Holocaust or genocide studies do, and do it in a way to support innovative approaches and especially also fostering interdisciplinary work. So to kind of not to fall into the trap to kind of be bound by the thinking of one discipline, by the kind of achievements of one discipline, but really to benefit from the kind of conversation of different disciplines. So I think this is one of the important vision, and a very kind of substantial part of this was the or is our fellowship program, and this has a lot to do with also my personal experience when I was a postdoc fellow at the Holocaust Museum in DC and at Harvard University. I really appreciated the conversations I had with other fellows, and I always thought this is so much so important to enable to have these conversations that my idea was to create a center where we have several fellows at the same time together, and they work on different topics, but have a possibility to speak to each other. So not only to enable this conversation, but also to kind of select fellows with innovative approaches to shape practically the future of Holocaust and genocide studies. So I think this is really how we envision the center, and you may probably, hopefully agree that we, in a way, kind of accomplished some of this. And although there were difficult times when the Shoah Foundation leadership kind of took a different path. They wanted to orient themselves to a kind of other direction, which led to the separation of the center from the Shoah Foundation by the university, which impacted our work and I think was a loss for both sides, the center, but also the Shaw Foundation. However, we tried to recover with the center, and also the impact of COVID, as you all know, was kind of heavy, but also opened up opportunities. And I think I want to just end with talking a little bit about more recent changes at the center. So while we kind of maintained our fellowship program, we increasingly welcome visiting scholars. We also are kind of still doing conferences on an annual basis, but nowadays all our events are kind of live streamed. And so we reach now audiences since COVID, which we never have dreamt of. People in South Africa, in South Korea, in Dubai, in Ukraine, in Latin America are watching our talks, commenting and interacting with our talks. So I think this is really something which we are very proud of, because our reach is quite kind of impactful there. And I want to say that with the live streaming, we are able to record all of these sessions, but we also recorded our previous sessions, which were in person. And so now we created a YouTube channel, which is, I think, a valuable resource for research, but also for teaching. And I think that's really important. I even heard voices that people in higher in um, now I'm blanking on the in school, so K to 12, but not at the last years. What is it?
High school.
High school. Oh my God. High school actually are also interested in using some of the talks we provide in our YouTube channel for their teaching. So I want to close with my short statement about the history to, first of all, thank all the fellows, all the visiting scholars, all the people who worked at some point in the center, and I see many of them, of you here, for your contributions. We could never done this without you. I think the center strives because of all these very valuable different voices which we had and which we hope to have in the future at the center. I hope we can raise funds for more fellowships, but right now we are in a situation that we have first to have to kind of to think about the foundation of the center by just raising funds, because the university won't fund us forever. But that's kind of for another day that we have to be worried about this. I'm really happy to kind of see all of you here, and hope to get some of kind of your thoughts together after Marta will present some of our accomplishments in forms of numbers.
Yes, if there's one thing about the center, we love counting. As any of you who get our newsletter know, usually in April, we send a big list of all our numbers, and I just wanted to share some of them with you before we hear from some former fellows and visiting scholars. Uh, so since in the last decade, we've welcomed 361 scholars. These are research fellows, Shapiro scholars who are luminaries in the field who visit us, participants of the Interdisciplinary Research Week program, where teams of scholars from different institutions and different countries come together to brainstorm a research project that uses testimony here for a week, teaching fellows, guest speakers, visiting scholars. We've thrown that term around. That is something we're very proud of, that we welcome scholars who have their own funding to come to USC, and we provide them workspace and mentoring, access to resources, and more scholars are coming in this capacity, and some of them are here on Zoom with us. Visiting researchers, so those are researchers who visit the center just for a short term to conduct research with the resources at USC, and then conference and workshop participants. These 361 scholars represent 27 countries on 6 continents. So our geographic reach is wide, and there are areas for more improvement in the future, more reach in the future, we hope. They represent 63 academic disciplines, and this list is actually more than 63 because we have them clustered in particular ways, but this is the complete list of the disciplines represented by the scholars who have participated in center programs, and we're very proud of this. We've organized 91 lectures with over 6,000 attendees. And I just wanted to mention, in addition to this, we've organized film screenings, cultural events. And if you think 6,000 attendees in 10 years is pretty impressive, since we launched the YouTube channel, we have had over 56,000 views on our YouTube channel, over 9,400 hours of content has been watched from our YouTube channel. So it just shows the afterlife of the research that happens at the center and the ways that that can reverberate. We've organized or co-organized 11 international conferences with over 1,100 attendees, and here are the posters of some of our past conferences where we've been the primary organizer and some where we have been the co-organizer. It's just a little snapshot. We are more and more trying to focus on original research at the center. So the two main projects currently where we are conducting original research is the Lastine project, which is a project to uncover unknown photos of mass deportations. Wolf, you want to say more about that?
Yeah, so we are kind of gathering the existing, but also the unknown photographs of deportations of Jews, Roma, and now more recently of victims of the Nazi euthanasia program. And we started with Germany, and now we added Austria, and in the future we hope to add more European countries. But it's not just to find the pictures, it is actually to identify the people on these photographs, like these two girls in Munich. We try to identify and tell the stories of these people who were deported, but not only of the ones who were deported, but also of witnesses and also perpetrators. And that's a multi-institutional project with several German archives, museums, and educational institutions.
And the center is the only partner in North America,
Yeah.
correct? Yeah. And then another research project that we're pursuing, myself and Beth Meyerowitz, who is a professor emerita of psychology, we are doing a project looking at the impacts of engaging with testimony for interviewers, videographers, scholars who watch testimonies. What are the challenges, the rewards of engaging with this difficult material, and what is the impact on people's lives years later? So we're working on that project.
Yeah, and I think this is increasingly important because while testimonies of survivors of mass violence were used now quite for some years, we realized that often we don't see what kind of emotional impact this can have on the people dealing with these kind of testimonies. And we think there is a greater actually good for this, not just for Holocaust and genocide studies, but we think the results of this research might be useful for people who go, for example, into war zones and take interviews, like journalists, like also physicians and lawyers. And so in the future, we hope to provide kind of a handbook for people who are engaging with testimonies of mass violence.
So we did an analysis. We put all of the titles of our lectures and our conferences into a program to generate a word cloud. And hopefully you see on your screen the results, which are quite illuminating in terms of the themes. Can you see it? Good. Okay. Quite illuminating about the themes that are explored most often at the center. We have 91 academic and community partners with whom we have organized events or co-sponsored events. And this is not even 91 logos. There are ones that are missing from this screen, but hopefully they show the range of partners that we've worked with and our openness to collaboration, which is a key element of what we do. We've had 95 fellows at the center, and this screen is as much for each person represented here as it is for Wolf, because I think when he founded the center, he probably um, didn't imagine the life that it would take and what people would how people would engage with it. And this is just a glimpse of the lives and careers of people that you have touched through your vision for the center. So we'll just take a moment to appreciate each of them.
But I have to give this also back because many of you and many of the fellows who are not there today benefited so much also from your mentorship, Martha. You should not we should not underestimate this.
Thank you. So speaking of the fellows, we can.
Just hold on one thing. One thing what I wanted to say is I think it's also important to just thank our co-sponsors and the people who we collaborated with, but also all the people who funded parts of our program, and especially those donors who kind of endowed fellowships. I think that's also important to say, because without all of this help, we could not invite people to come here and do this important research.
I completely agree. And I would also add thanks to the people within the university who support our work, like the Dornsife media team, who are always incredible with recording our events, and the VHA curator, Crispin Brooks, who helps every single person that passes through our doors. We could go on with thank yous. But now we get to the part of the program I am most excited for. So as we described, we have such a broad range of geographies, academic disciplines, topics, themes, scholars at all different levels from undergraduate to senior scholars. So we wanted to invite some of them to share about their projects that they did while they were at the center and reflect a bit on um, the center's impact on their work and their career. So now we're going to hear from 6 of them briefly, and they will introduce themselves to you. But I want to thank them in advance for being part of this program. And it feels only fitting to start with Jared McBride, who was the inaugural Greenberg Fellow, but I'm already introducing him, which he's supposed to do for himself. He is currently an assistant professor of history at UCLA. So Jared, take it away.
Thanks, because I saved a couple minutes then. So, Jared McBride, nice to see many of you, some new faces and some very familiar ones. As Martha said, I was the first inaugural Greenberg Research Fellow. I actually had to check the year when I was there to give you a sense of how long the center's been around. My wife and I had a 5-minute debate about what year it was and what month. Fortunately, we have computers, and I was able to figure out it was in January of 2015. I'm a historian. My research focuses on the Second World War in Western Ukraine, in particular the region of Volhynia or Volyn, and I examine questions about collaboration and perpetration during, but also not limited to, the Holocaust and other mass violent events during the Second World War. My kind of place, or my fellowship, kind of caught me at a really helpful time in my career. I had just finished my dissertation, and the fellowship sort of served as a postdoc opportunity for me as I was kind of doing the postdoc circuit and not finding jobs at that particular that particular time. So I was able to kind of take this opportunity to shore up some I would say some aspects of the dissertation that were lacking in terms of research issues. So my focus during my time at the center and as a fellow was almost exclusively on the foundation's oral testimonies related to my region of study in Western Ukraine. Thankfully, I should say I didn't kind of come in wide-eyed. I had a bit of a running start thanks to my early interactions with the ever-present and diligent Crispin Brooks, who I had met during graduate school, and it actually enticed me to come over to USC where I watched some of these testimonies in what seemingly was like a closet in the libraries somewhere. So which I think it may be important for kind of looking back holistically on the experience and engagement with this institution. By the time I had come back, as after I finished my doctorate, right, there's a center, there's a staff, there's all this support and research network there to help with the research. So coming back and working with the collection was really invaluable for me, and I would say it's paid dividends in my kind of life as a scholar in two ways, and just very briefly because I know I have 5 minutes. So first, in my scholarly work, obviously the voices of Holocaust survivors remain an integral part of my research, and now they figure prominently in the manuscript which I'm finishing up. And this is to say, even in spite of this being a manuscript on the study of perpetrators, listening to the voices of survivors is very important, as they have a lot to say about perpetrators, especially the ones that were their neighbors in places like Western Ukraine. And then second, I'll also say that the work that I did at the center at this time and subsequently was really useful in my teaching, right? So the kind of actual spending of the time going through the videos, finding clips, taking quotes down, that kind of work and preparation, which I will say does not often happen while you're designing a course or definitely while you're teaching a course. To have spent that time at the center, at that time prepping that material, some of which filtered into the manuscript, other parts of that work filter into my teaching. So you'll see clips from my time at the center in the lectures I give at UCLA, quotes as well. So this really kind of is, been a really important part of my pedagogy. I also want to just say something, and this is kind of maybe falling in the frame of the postdoc framework. The professional development that was important to me as a part of this fellowship. The opportunity to give a public lecture, of which now I would say I've given a few. That was a really early opportunity for me to do that, and that meant a lot to have the support, have the advice on how to put together a lecture of that length, how to speak to different types of audiences. That was something that was really helpful and that I drew upon in subsequent years. I also had the opportunity to work with an undergraduate researcher, Alex Visser, who was there at the time. And that was really great opportunity too, and not something I'd ever done before. The ability to try to explain your research to someone else who doesn't understand your research, to have them help you with it, is not like a natural thing when you're coming out of graduate school. And so Alex did a lot of really great research for me to help me at the time. And the lessons I learned from working with her have also really helped me work with undergraduates at UCLA and try to bring students on board for my research projects and not kind of make it this lonely task. Finally, quickly, I was asked to share maybe a memory. This is maybe a funny one. I was watching a video. It was a survivor, Ukrainian survivor, from my region of Volhynia. He was living in Lviv after the war. Gave the testimony in the 1990s, this wonderful passage about how he knows a family, this Ukrainian family participated in the Holocaust. And I want to quote this, it's going to be in the book. I use it for teaching. But there's one sentence in the middle of this paragraph I just cannot make out in Russian. And he speaks very clean, kind of standard Russian. I cannot make it out. I call Crispin in. Crispin speaks wonderful Russian. His wife's Russian. Can't make it out. We called someone else in. I think by the end of the day, 4 people had come into the room and listened to this clip. And we found some other Russian speaker on campus. So we had this really, this communal group effort to decipher one sentence, which ultimately I think was meaningless in this testimony video. So that was really kind of a special, almost humorous moment from my time. So to close, and to turn it over to the next person, I want to thank Wolf Gruner for all of his support over the years, not just during this fellowship. He's been a mentor and colleague that I benefit from in innumerable ways. I want to thank the Greenbergs, Margie and Doug, for supporting this fellowship and allowing me the honor to be the first recipient. And then, as Wolf has said, and other people have already said, the staff at the center and and at the foundation have done so much for me. Again, not just during the fellowship, but over the years. Martha, Kia, Badema, Crispin, and many others. Scholarship would not be possible if these people were not there to help us do the work. And I'll just last line. It always makes me proud. I always take the opportunity to put that I was a Greenberg Fellow at the USC Shoah Foundation Center and at Wolf Center in my bios or whenever I'm giving a talk or anything like that. It always makes me proud to see that line in my CV. And I'm sure many of my colleagues here feel the same. And I look forward to many more scholars in the future having that opportunity and also to feel that pride. So thank you.
Thank you, Jared. That's so beautiful. Thank you. I'm touched, but keep it together. So our next speaker is Piotr Florczyk, who is an assistant professor of global literary studies at the University of Washington. So good to see you.
Yeah, thanks very much. Thanks very much for having me. I apologize if you can hear some background noise. I've got a construction crew at my house. They were supposed to come tomorrow, but they're here today, so I apologize in advance. Yeah, Piotr Florczyk. I teach at UW in Seattle, but I'm calling in from Los Angeles because I'm one of the crazy people who commute. So I fly up and down the coast between Seattle and LA. Great to see everyone. Thanks to Wolf and Martha for having me. Um, I th- okay, if Jared was the first one, I may have been like one of the second ones, or maybe fellows, or I think definitely the first fellow who had an artistic research fellowship, right? So in the summer of 2016, I was a graduate research fellow. And then I came back to the center the following year to take part in the digital approaches to genocide studies. And I was at USC at the time, yes, working on my dissertation. Primarily a poet and a translator, a comparatist. So I teach global literary studies, looking at poetries from around the world, including memory studies. And when I applied to be a fellow at the center, I wrote that I was interested in engaging with the testimonies and then writing a collection of poems or a sequence of poems based on the testimonies. Not unlike something that, say, I don't know, Charles Reznikov had done with his collection Holocaust, for instance, where he engaged with the Nuremberg trials testimonies or transcripts. And I'm not sure what Wolf and Martha thought about that proposal, but obviously it worked. I spent 2 weeks in the summer of 2016 again, and I will say that again, unlike Jared. Jared, I'm sorry I keep comparing myself to you, but unlike you, I was quite overwhelmed when I arrived at the center. Um, the idea was that I would watch testimonies of Polish Jews and then again write poems about what I heard, what I saw, because it was really important for me to also engage with the body language, right? We know how the testimonies, what they are, how they were recorded, the questions that people were asked, etc. And in due time, I discovered that what was really interesting about the testimonies to me, in addition to all the factual information, was the body language, was the things that I could have sensed were the speakers were not able to articulate because either because the memories were too painful or because they like we know many of them spoke in their, I would guess, second, third, perhaps fourth language in many instances. Uh, but that was the idea, to write poems about what I heard, what I saw, and I was able to do that. I published a collection of poems called From the Annals of Kraków in the summer of 2020. So it took about 4 years for me to find a way to, um, for lack of better term, to turn the things, the quotes, the notes I took into poems. And so the collection came out in 2020, and I will share a couple poems from that collection in just a second. Um, And what I decided to do is, in addition to um, mapping out the testimonies onto the city of Krakow, which is where I was born and raised, as well as all the surrounding villages, places that have since World War II been incorporated into the city, places that I had, when I was growing up there, places that I had known in a very different capacity, in a different way. For instance, I will never forget one of the testimonies given by a survivor who went on to be a doctor here in the States, but he talked about how during World War II he found shelter in a Cistercian abbey in Krakow, a place that I have visited many ways, and in a kind of a very on a very an additional personal level, a place that's very close to a um, to a swimming pool that I happen to swim at every time I'm in Krakow, visiting family or friends. And so, again, one spends all this time going about their business in a particular place and never realizes, what may have happened in that place during World War II in this case. So I was very much interested also in interrogating, if you will, the actual experience of an artist engaging with testimonies. And I have read from the book at universities and conferences and festivals, and every once in a while I get that question, like, well, what was it like? Did it feel like you were exploiting these testimonies, these memories for artistic purposes? And so that's always been part of this entire project, and something that's been very important to me. This fall I'll be giving a talk at the Jewish Institute or Jewish Center, no, Jewish Institute in Antwerp in Belgium. uh, not so much reading from the book and reading the poems, but really discussing the ramifications of what it is to engage as an artist with testimonies. um, um, let's see. Yeah, maybe I'll share a couple poems from the book, so you get a sense. Everyone gets a sense of what's in it. Um, so most of the poems are untitled, and what you'll hear is in a couple of these poems is that there are a number of characters, if you will. On the one hand, there are the survivors. They are the people whose testimonies I'm working with. But there are also two people called Piotr. There is a Piotr who lives in Poland today and works as a tour guide. And then there's the Piotr, myself, who is the researcher, who is the poet, the translator, etc., engaging with these with the testimonies. So this is number two. Little is known of the life of Krakow's Jews 7 decades after the war, since knowing and remembering are not one and the same. My guide, Piotr Polin, the alliteration and exercise for my tongue tells me as much. Most lived in Kazimierz, south of Rynek. Some prospered, others didn't. We've also heard of a long tradition of welcoming and persecuting the Jews in the city. Piotr, who met me at the station, is 38 and graying at the temples. He wears thick rimmed glasses. The tan cargo shorts and a too tight short sleeve button down shirt belie seriousness and enthusiasm. I'll tip him at the end. Number 6. Whose, if not mine, are these words? Listening is a form of speaking. Viewed from another angle, the far corner of the room where servers hum with the stories of survival. Piotr tells me he's heard it all, having guided group and private tours through these streets, marching past the bars that stay open late, serving chilled vodka and pickles and herring. He learned how to build dugouts, forage for berries and roots, how the air tastes at night when the mouths hidden underground all day come out. The room I worked in has become a story itself. the keyboard, the mouse, the screen in front of me. For every search word, either a place or name, an index of tributaries. Kraków kept showing up on every map. The surrounding villages, Skała, Grębałów, Mogiła, or Węg, whose names mean something else to me, no less a constellation of what could have been if the day of the week were a Monday instead of a Wednesday, morning instead of evening. These words become mine the moment I let them go. Thank you. Thanks again, Wolf and Martha, for having me and this wonderful opportunity.
Thank you. All right, our next speaker is Brigittine French, who is Assistant Vice President of Global Education and Professor of Anthropology at Grinnell College. Brigittine, it's so wonderful to see you. Thank you for being here.
I'm really delighted and humbled to join you today. Let me thank you both, Martha and Wolf, for bringing us together to reflect on the many successes and advancements that you and the center have enabled, and to remember those in times that are challenging. Wolf, as you said, I think as I thought about us coming together in this way, in any way, really, like to hold in mind that to remember and to recollect is about the past, but it's also about the future. And so as we recall, we also hope that a complement to where we have been in the present is where we hope to go. I was sharing all of my hopes about the dialectic between the past and the future, but since the present is a bit bumped up, and at the moment, maybe I'll just step into offering to share with you all a little bit about the transformative experiences that I've had really as a scholar in my own work, and then thinking about that in the broader community to which we all belong, thinking about the Holocaust and genocide comparatively. And I think one of the gifts of the center has been, for me, and I'm sure many other folks will reflect on, the iterative way that once someone becomes involved in some aspect of work at the center, then that brings forth other opportunities, new angles, new vectors, and it's very generative. So in my own case, I had the privilege to be a presenter at one of the second conference maybe that you all did in 2016 on the Guatemalan genocide. And I'm an anthropologist, linguistic anthropologist. And there I presented about genocidal language, right? And the role of discourse in harm and targeting the indigenous Maya population. And that conference experience, I'd actually like to reflect on the conference for a moment because I would say 20 years of giving papers nationally and internationally. The conference at USC really stands out as the most engaged, what felt like the most engaged, simultaneously deeply scholarly and with a lot of nuance and deeply accessible, very much an instance of public scholarship and public discourse. So the way that you all were able to do, right, we were working through multiple languages. Spanish was operative, English was operative, there were some Mayan languages, there was simultaneous translation. And what emerged then was a freedom for people to speak in whatever language their ideas were coming to them and folks to respond in that way. So it felt like I have never been in a conference before or after that has been able to have that kind of robust multilingual fluidity. It remains something that I hope one day to replicate or to be part of in a way that's replicated. And I think the other piece of that was it was interdisciplinary. We were thinking about the Guatemalan genocide historically, economically, anthropologically, sociologically, even, from the perspective of survivors, activists, academics, and all of that in its interdisciplinarity, its richness, was coupled with this amazing public engagement with all kinds of and it was before the pandemic. So, but all kinds of folks attending, listening, phoning in, asking questions. And I felt, as I never had before, really, the relevancy of our work, both in the academy and to thinking about democratic citizenship. And that was really transformational for me and remains a goal, right, in my own work. And so from there, having had the experience of listening and talking and thinking over, several days, then that context gave me the opportunity to then actually think about taking my work on the Guatemalan genocide in a new direction, which then was to look at and survivor testimonies in the VHA, of course, with the support of Martha and Wolf and Badema, and to think about, we have genocidal language and then the language of genocide survivors, and to really step into looking at indigenous Maya perspectives on genocide that may not be recognized in social science epistemological framings or discursive framings of those events. And so the center welcomed me back in 2019, where I had the chance to really go through and think about the range of voices in that collection of roughly 600 life histories, and start thinking about whose voices they represented, what Maya communities, what languages, and how I could build a project on what. And so coming to the center then a couple of times as a visiting scholar, and then enabled yet another turn in my career, which was then thinking about these testimonies and in a social scientific way, and then trying to build a project, a collaborative project back in Guatemala with colleagues who I worked with 20 years ago who are indigenous, to have a collaborative project that I'm working on now on transcribing and analyzing genocide survivor testimony in conversation with folks of my generation who lived through the genocide and armed conflict in Guatemala. We've just now started to publish some of that work in Spanish, so that folks who lived through that can read it. And then I would say overall, what my I think very particular example said is about the center and the leadership therein is that it enables broadly a focus, then an intensification and a deepening of research in ways that absolutely could not happen without the center. That continues to be collaborative, interdisciplinary, and necessarily transnational. I know of no other center that enables us to work in that kind of way. And I think I'll conclude just by saying this, thinking about and working on with Guatemalan genocide, any genocide that we were to study can be very intense. Of course, it's necessarily intensive, and one becomes immersed in the details. And the wonderful things I think about the center is it reminds us of our interlocutors and our allies and our fellow travelers asking similar questions about mass violence in other parts of the world. And it reminds us, right, of that commitment to do so. So grateful, I'm indebted. I look very much toward the future. Thank you for enduring whatever with my mentor.
Thank you so much. That was very eloquent, and I take it to heart, so thank you. Our next speaker is Ioanida Costache, who is an assistant professor of ethnomusicology in the Department of Music at Stanford University.
Good afternoon, everyone. Yeah, I am joining from Stanford, California, which sits on the ancestral lands of the Ohlone people. I am not as eloquent an extemporaneous speaker as my co-presenters, so I have prepared written remarks that I will read. I wanted to start by just saying how delighted I am to participate in this webinar in celebration of the 10th anniversary of the center. I'm honored to have a chance to speak about the important impact the center, its resources, both material and human, have had on my trajectory as a scholar and as a person, and on my research endeavors as well. So thank you very much for the invitation. As the 2019 and 2020 Breslauer, Rutman, and Anderson Research Fellow at the Center, I consulted Romani testimonies with an ear towards how survivors encoded their experience of trauma in sound, in music, and in song. As a fellow, I had the Center's archive at my disposal, which holds 406 interviews with Romani Holocaust survivors. This is the largest collection of Romani testimonies in any institution in the world. So with risk of putting too fine a point on the matter, I must underline the institutional and structural importance that this repository of Romani testimonies signifies, not only for my personal scholarly agenda, but also for the broader Romani community and our collective pathways towards emancipation. My work, a work of recovery of Romani subaltern histories of persecution, would not be possible without the early investment from the center in collecting these testimonies in the decades after the Holocaust. In my work, both then and now, I problematize the silence surrounding the Romani Holocaust, a history that's been muted and distorted for decades. As Orenbach Stier contends in a quote that I quote probably every time I think about or teach about or talk about the Holocaust, he says, quote, "His Holocaust memory matters because it is made to matter by and through cultural forms and institutions that mediate the Holocaust in the present day," end quote. The lack of recognition of the Romani genocide demonstrates the way in which memory has ceased to matter precisely because of the lack of frameworks, institutional, commemorative, educational, or historiographic, that would allow for individual Romani memory to become part of societal collective memory. My own story of a Romani scholar working to recover these histories and the crucial role that the center has played in that work demonstrates precisely Stier's claim in showing how an institution like the Center for Advanced Genocide Research can help amplify the memory of the genocide of Roma by inviting readers, listeners, scholars, institutions to recognize, remember, and carry forth the counter histories of Romani Holocaust survivors. This work is indebted to the centers, as I mentioned, or I guess not the centers, but the Shell Foundation's early initiatives to preserve Romani Holocaust memory and enacts this mediating process that Stier outlines. It makes the history of the Roma Holocaust and commemorative memory work possible by enabling scholarly work and continuing to underline the importance of these histories and their afterlives. The community of support at the center was imperative to my own ability to conduct research on one of the most difficult topics to discuss, let alone to sit with day to day, continuously re-encountering the horror of genocide. I recall quite vividly a conversation with Martha in which I was sensitized to what it might mean to ethically engage testimony, in which I began to think about what it means to deeply listen to survivors. How do we hear beyond the words and tap into the affective worlds they open up to us with their generous reflections? What responsibilities do we hold upon listening to absorb not only their stories and the content of their life trajectories, but also to carry the weight of the collective suffering their stories transmit, to carry them with us not only in our research, but in our teaching and in our daily lives and everyday actions? The capacious impact of these exchanges and opportunities for thoughtful reflection with the fellows, the staff, and the directors at the center on my own work and on my life are impossible for me to fully capture in this short intervention. I will say that it was among the brilliant minds at the center, Wolf, Badima, Martha, and too many others to list here, that I became a scholar and a better listener, one attuned to the multifarious and unwieldy nature of testimony, histories, and trauma. And for that, I'm extremely grateful to have had the opportunity and the time that I had at the center. And I just want to say happy anniversary and thank you for all of the work that you do.
Thank you so much. Thank you. We have two more speakers. Our next speaker is Lucy Sun, who is currently a student at Harvard Law School. Lucy?
Sorry, I was not prepared to go. But hi, everyone. I'm Lucy. I am currently a student again, and I was a Beth and Arthur Lev undergraduate research fellow in July 2020. The project that brought me to the center was my history thesis project on Chinese women's resistance to sexual violence during the Nanjing massacre. I was introduced to this topic by Professor Gruner when I took his resistance to genocide course. And during the course, he really encouraged us to engage in research that was personal to us. So because my family is from the Nanjing area, I wrote a research paper on Chinese women's resistance during the Nanjing massacre. And I really enjoyed the research process so much because I felt like I was doing something new for the first time, something innovative. So I asked Professor Gruner if I could do an honors thesis on the same topic. And he pointed me to the center and encouraged me to apply for a fellowship. And during the fellowship, I did most of my work in the visual history archives, listening to oral testimonies from Nanjing massacre survivors. And it was during COVID, so I was at home on my computer most of the time, but I still felt like I was really supported by everyone at the center, and especially Professor Gruner. And my fellowship experience really shifted the focus of my research because the testimonies were really crucial, I realized, to understanding women's experiences in their own words, and ultimately shaped my thesis into centering the women's words to weave together a portrait of women's agency during the Nanjing massacre. So to this day, it has, I think, been still the most academically challenging experience because of the heaviness of the research and also the independence that I was given, because in the beginning, I really did not know what I was doing. But I feel like it's also really prepared me to handle anything now. And it's also given me so many opportunities that I wouldn't have tried to get on my own, because I was able to give a lecture for the first time, which was incredibly terrifying. But I think I'm getting better at speaking. I'm still very nervous right now, but it gave me the confidence to present my research again at the undergraduate symposium at USC. That was a really, really cool experience too. So I'm really grateful for the experience, for taking Professor Gruner's resistance to genocide class, and because that really did shape the trajectory of my academic experience at USC. And so I think, to close, I want to thank Professor Gruner for all his guidance. I don't think I would be where I am if it wasn't for him. So I'm incredibly grateful to him. And I also want to thank Martha and everyone else at the center for giving me this experience and for inviting me to speak. And I think I spoke very fast, but thank you.
You spoke beautifully, Lucy. Thank you so much. And our final speaker is Raissa Alonso, who is a PhD candidate in social history at the University of Sao Paulo in Brazil.
Hi everyone. It's such a responsibility to close the fellows guest lectures, I guess. Um, it's very inspiring to hear from past fellows as well, because I keep hearing, oh, someone is a professor assistant and everything, and I keep thinking I'm just still a PhD candidate. I'm still working on my dissertation, and I cannot, oh my God, I cannot fully express the impact the center has had, not only in my research, but also in my life as well. Because coming from Brazil, I think everyone shares their own difficulties, I guess, with their own research. But when I came to the US for the first time in my life, for the Douglas and Margie Greenberg Fellowship in March last year, I was so completely overwhelmed, and I was so warmly welcomed by everyone in the center, and I never thought I could, develop all the potential that I had in my head, for this research, and I've never felt so supported in my life. So it was really an inspiring experience, not only because I finally had access to several resources that I never dreamed of having access, like primary sources, and of course the VHA, which was an incredible experience, not just because of the treasure trove that is there are those testimonies, but because we do have a similar project here in Brazil that I've been part of for the last 10 years or so. So when Martha asked me to, pick up share a memory of my time in the center, I always think about how when we interviewed someone here in Brazil, and they mentioned a lost brother who ended up in Australia. And when I went to the center, we found the testimony of the lost brother. So now we have a fuller picture, I guess, from this diaspora. And that's absolutely, amazing and inspiring. And I work with the anti-Nazi resistance that emerged from intellectuals and artists that hailed from Germany and established themselves in the American continent as a whole. And it was such an incredible experience not to work only with the VHA, which provided a lot of other kinds of testimonies that I've never imagined the reach that these organizations could take, but as well as the Leon Feuchtwanger Memorial Library, which held, incredible resources for the specific parts of my research. And it was, very moving to be able to work with like original letters from Thomas Mann, things that you only, dream of holding. So it was just for 1 month, but I I came back a different person, I guess, to Brazil, and I shared my experience with everyone, and I felt very inspired and supported by Marta and Wolf as well. So I applied to the Fulbright Fellowship, and I'm coming back this year in August to work with the center again. And I don't know, I just keep hoping that I will be able to work with the center for a very long time. And perhaps when the center turns 20 years, has its event of the 20-year anniversary, perhaps I can be invited to speak again, this time with like some title as assistant professor somewhere, perhaps. So thank you so much for this opportunity to speak. I can never thank enough Mr. the Greenbergs for their fellowship, their generous fellowship. It would have not been possible for someone from Brazil to come and study at this top reference center without it. And it really changed my life. And everyone at the center is, wow, such it's incredible what you guys do with the resources that you have, and I cannot thank you enough for touching me and helping me this way. So I'm not as articulate as everyone else. I think it's clear for everyone that I'm kind of nervous, but here is my experience, and I appreciated it a lot.
Thank you so much. And we'll see you in August. Wow, that's a lot to absorb. Thank you, all of you who made comments. Before we conclude, I guess I would ask you, Wolf, about the future. What do you envision coming up?
But
Is there?
you want to invite some people?
I do. We
Oh,
will.
okay.
Before we'll conclude our part, and then I'll invite some. Anything you want to share about the future?
Yeah, so I mean, probably you know that we have already a lot lined up for this year. We will, and this is also recognition of the work the center achieved to do with all your help. That we will host one of the biggest genocide organizations, or one of the two big international genocide organizations here in June, for the big conference with almost 200 genocide scholars here, and then also in November, the Lessons and Legacies, where we co-host with Claremont McKenna. So there will be 200 Holocaust scholars on campus this year. We are also looking into the future. So we just are planning our kind of maybe second part of the Mass Violence Against Indigenous Communities conference, which we hopefully will do in Argentina. So we are conspiring about this. So there are exciting things to do in the future. We hope to get kind of funding so that we can sustain our fellowship program. We are also envisioning to, if kind of funding allows, to focus more on our own research at the center. So these are the things we are looking towards the future.
Thank you. And congratulations on 10 years. Before I open the floor, I hope you'll indulge me with just one more slide. Let's see. And that is of some of the staff members who have contributed their time and energy and work into the center over the years. We're so grateful to each and every one of them. We always tell our fellows that once you are a part of the center, you know, you're always a part of our family, and we feel the same way about our staff and our former staff. And there are even some undergraduate student workers who are not reflected here, whose help is invaluable to what we do. So I just wanted you to see their faces. You've heard their names in some of the remarks, and thank you for that.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
And now we have a few minutes if anybody wants to ask a question or share their own memory or reflect in some way on the center. We would love to hear from you. So you can raise your hand or unmute yourself, or Peg.
Hi, I mean, I just want to mention just how brave the center is. Having followed the history, you know, the connection originally with the Shoah Foundation, and then sort of bravely forging off on your own, keeping links, holding political nous, which is so essential to the work that you do. So I just really want to applaud your political nous that you hold with integrity. And at this particular time, and with the future conference that's going to be, well, that is being organized, just knowing that you will continue to do that. So it just creates a lot of trust as a fellow colleague researcher and so on. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Chad? You out there?
Just wanted to say thank you to everyone, and that it's great to see you all again. And I think I can say that I got to have Wolf come to my center just a couple of weeks ago, which was a great experience to kind of reverse roles for a second there. And I'm someone who's always thought of academic, sort of, you could say, academic genealogy, who trained under who and what the lineage of someone's thought is. And in that way, I think it's just absolutely fantastic that one of my own students will be starting at USC in the fall with Wolf, and hopefully get to meet Martha very quickly and the rest of the team. And I could not be happier about that, to send on a student whose presence I've so much valued here, and get to see her, Grace Schaefer is her name, get her to see her work with Wolf and all of the things that are sure to come in the future there.
Thank you, Chad. I've already met her, and I'm looking forward to working with her more. Any other comments, questions, reflections? Mr. Greenberg, would you like to share anything? Not to put you on the spot, but your name has been mentioned a lot.
As long as I'm here, I will. What I thought I'd reflect on the prehistory of the center, because the idea for it actually precedes Wolf, and precedes even the Show Foundation being at USC. As some of you know, I was the CEO of the Show Foundation when we were an independent organization. When I first considered coming, one of the first things I thought was that the testimonies needed to live in an academic environment, and that they were primarily, not only, but primarily a tool for scholarly research. I came from that kind of background, and I was predisposed, therefore, to think of it in that way. But I was not a Holocaust scholar. And that's another story, but my original field was early American history. But when I knew I was going to move to the Show Foundation, I thought, well, someday there ought to be something, some set of fellowship, something. I didn't even know what it was, but I knew that it had to be part of what we would do. And then we negotiated the agreement to move to USC, which is a complicated story in and of itself. And I said to people in the administration, I'm not sure Wolf even knows this, I said, we need to have somebody in the history department who actually knows something about this subject. And that's not me. We need a scholar who is a scholar of the Holocaust, and preferably of genocide as well, because that's what seemed to me to be important. And I persuaded them that that was a good idea, and the history department was persuaded that it was a good idea. And I had met Wolf at a conference in Berlin. You remember Wolf? And I thought, well, that's probably the guy. But I wasn't trying to fix the search, but it worked out because Wolf was so terrific. And really, right from the very moment we moved to USC, right up until the time I left USC, which was soon after Wolf arrived, as it turned out, I always had in mind that someday there ought to be a center. I thought then, as part of the Show Foundation, I agree with Wolf that it's a loss to both sides, that the center is no longer part of the Show Foundation, but the achievements they have no comparison to what my original idea was, because the achievements so have outstripped what I had in mind. And it's very moving to Margie and me. Margie had to leave, to see that something that we had talked about together, just the two of us, has actually become something so substantial and across so many different ways of thinking about this set of very, very big problems. So this was a wonderful event for the two of us, not just because of our fellowship, but because of the achievements of the center. And the prehistory was a glimmer of an idea. It's a little bit like that scene in 2001 where the prehistoric men throw that rock up in the air, that stick up in the air, and the next thing you see is the space station. Well, I feel a little but like that guy banging that rock and throwing it up in the air. And now I see the space station. And it's a really quite wonderful and moving experience for me and for Margie.
Thank you, Doug.
And if I may add to the story, so I vividly remember how we met in Berlin. And I think only because of this conversation we had, I actually wanted to come to USC, because we talked really about that you were very serious about not just thinking about the Holocaust, but also about other genocides. And I have to admit, at the time, I was a little bit kind of one of the scholars who were very skeptical about the Shoah Foundation, who was thinking, like many other academics at the time, this is kind of Hollywood construction. But our conversation kind of, in a way, let me rethink this. And today, I have to say, after 10 years with the center, I'm the biggest convert. So I'm kind of like now the biggest promoter of the testimonies as this incredible, important resource, which make us rethink our approaches to Holocaust and genocide study in so many ways in general, but also in specific, kind of in very particular areas. And so I think to help to kind of enable scholars to use this resource and understand how important it is, I think this is one of the most valuable things I was able to do. And this goes back to this one conversation at the Freie University in Berlin.
Right.
Janine?
Hi, congratulations. 10 years is a big deal. So I'm one of those people who have benefited so much from the center. Back in 2020, I was, actually it was 2019 that I was asked to create a Center for Genocide and Human Rights Research in Africa and the diaspora. And as a faculty member, I thought, I'm in Chicago at Northeastern, University. So I thought, as a faculty member, who can I model our center to? Who can help me? Who can guide me? So I scanned, looked east, west, and I found Wolf, a faculty member who created that center. I said, that's who I want to talk to. So I wrote to him, and within a very short time, he responded right away. And I flew to USC and met Martha. And there was, unfortunately, I don't remember the fellow who was there at that time. And they walked me through, they took a whole afternoon, walked me through what the center was about, what their priorities were, and introduced me to the Visual History Archive, which was a phenomenal, a very important element that I took with me. And so not only have we created the center in Chicago, we have created different pillars. And one of them is a digital oral history archive. And Wolf, of course, knows, he's been, I've kept him informed of what's going on. But it's been a wonderful, wonderful resource for us to kind of, as we move along, we can look and see what they are achieving. And this is wonderful to see you celebrate 10 years. So thank you so much again for your support and for that wonderful afternoon in 2020. Mm-hmm.
Thank you. We look forward to celebrating many anniversaries of your center.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you.
Walter?
Well, I want to send you a big hug to Martha and Wolf and congratulate all those who work at the center to all this year. I celebrate your commitment to the memory, truth, and justice that the victims of genocide deserve. I hope to continue sharing projects and activities together. Thank you for your hospitality, solidarity, and commitment to open doors to the hope. And well, we hope see you all together in Patagonia in 2026.
Anybody else? Any comments or anything? Thank you so much for marking this occasion with us. As Wolf said, it's difficult days at USC right now, but we really didn't want to let this anniversary pass without pausing and reflecting on all the people who've been a part of the center over the years. And thank you to all of you for coming, and to our speakers, especially for sharing your experiences.
Yeah, because as I said, it's wonderful to see all of you, and it's very touching to see that that we are not kind of only influencing scholarly kind of trajectories, but also that we somehow also are influential in somebody's lives. So I mean, we could not ask for more, and I think in a way this is also fitting, because we all work on the same kind of practically issue, to really advance the study of Holocaust and genocide studies, and to understand these issues better, because they are so pressing even today.
So with that, we conclude. Thank you so much.